Have you ever felt a deep, unshakable pull towards something greater, only to realize that the people around you can't hear the frequency you're tuned into? Welcome to RationalDeen. If you are watching this, it's not by accident. You've been summoned to a higher understanding, and today, you are going to learn exactly what it means to be chosen for a path that most will never even see. By the end of this video, you will have a completely new perspective on your struggles, your purpose, and the specific reasons why you are being called to step forward alone. Buckle up, because we are diving deep into the mechanics of your destiny. Have you ever noticed that the most profound shifts in your life happen during the moments of absolute stillness? The call to greatness is rarely delivered through a megaphone in a crowded room. Instead, it arrives as a subtle vibration in the quietest hours of the night. This silence is not empty, it is a vacuum designed to pull out the truth of who you are. When the world stops talking at you, you are finally forced to listen to the frequency of your own soul and the higher intelligence guiding it. To truly hear this call, you must first learn to filter out the static of societal expectations and the constant chatter of digital distractions. Most people live their entire lives responding to external stimuli, never realizing that the blueprint for their destiny is being whispered in a language that requires total internal silence. This stage of your journey is about developing a selective ear. You are being trained to recognize the difference between the ego's loud demands and the steady, quiet hum of a divine directive. The reason you are being called in solitude is that a crowd will always try to talk you out of your purpose. Other people project their own fears and limitations onto you, creating a wall of noise that drowns out your intuition. By isolating you, the universe is creating a protected space where your vision can take root without being poisoned by the skepticism of others. It is in this void that you find the clarity needed to understand why you were chosen for this specific moment in history. This silence also serves as a mirror, reflecting your internal state back to you with brutal honesty. Without the distractions of social validation or busy work, you are left alone with your thoughts, fears, and untapped potential. This is often the most uncomfortable part of the process, but it is necessary. You cannot lead or create from a place of chaos. The silence is a forge, shaping your mind into a sharp instrument capable of cutting through the illusions of the material world. Ultimately, mastering the sense of the call means becoming comfortable with the unknown. It is the transition from seeking answers outside of yourself to realizing that you are the answer. When you stop looking for confirmation from the world, you become unshakable. You begin to move with a sense of certainty that others find intimidating because they don't understand where your signal is coming from. You are no longer guessing. You are following a broadcast that only you are tuned into. Being chosen is often romanticized as a stroke of luck or a badge of honor, but the reality is far more demanding. It is a heavy mantle that requires you to sacrifice the comfort of being normal for the sake of a mission you might not fully understand yet. This weight is the first test of your character. It measures your ability to carry a burden without complaining and to stand tall when the pressure of your potential feels like it might crush you. The psychological burden of selection lies in the realization that you can no longer afford to live a mediocre life. Once you have been called, your mistakes carry more weight and your growth becomes a non-negotiable requirement. You are held to a higher standard than those around you, not because you are better, but because your impact is designed to be greater. This realization often brings a sense of gravity to your daily actions, turning every decision into a brick in the foundation of your legacy. One of the hardest aspects of this weight is the inherent responsibility to those you are meant to serve or lead. You are being prepared to be a pillar for others, which means you must first become unbreakable. The challenges you face right now are not punishments. They are stress tests. Just as steel is tempered in the fire to handle immense pressure, Your spirit is being hardened so that you can carry the hopes and needs of those who will eventually look to you for guidance. This selection also necessitates a radical shift in your priorities. You can no longer waste energy on trivial dramas or short-term gratifications that do not serve your higher calling. The weight of your destiny acts as a natural filter, forcing you to drop anything that slows your ascent. This process of shedding is painful as it often involves leaving behind habits and people that were once central to your identity. But it is the only way to make room for the power you are meant to wield. Finally, accepting the weight of selection means embracing the loneliness of the top. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that comes with being the one who has to see further and work harder than everyone else, however. This weight is also what gives your life its profound meaning. It is the gravity that keeps you grounded while your vision reaches for the heavens. You carry this burden not because you have to, but because you are the only one capable of turning that weight into a force for change in the world. The timing of your current struggle is not a coincidence, nor is it a sign of failure. You have been summoned to this specific moment in history because the world is undergoing a shift that requires the exact frequency of your unique soul. This is what many call the Great Reset of the individual, a period where the old systems of your life are systematically dismantled to make room for a version of you that is capable of handling the coming era. You are not being punished by your circumstances, you are being positioned by them. This summons often arrives when you have reached the absolute limit of your current container. You may feel a sense of intense friction or a feeling that your old life is suddenly too small for you. This discomfort is the signal that your evolution is no longer optional. The universe has identified a gap in the fabric of reality that only your skills, your pain, and your perspective can fill. You are being called out of the shadows now because the light you carry is required to pierce through the specific darkness of this time. The challenges you are facing today are actually precise training modules designed to develop the resilience you will need for your true mission. If you are dealing with betrayal, it is to teach you discernment. If you are dealing with loss, it is to teach you detachment. If you are dealing with silence, it is to teach you to find power within. Every obstacle is a data point, preparing you for a role that hasn't been fully revealed yet. You are in a high-intensity preparation phase for a destiny that is rapidly approaching. Waiting for a better time to act is a trap, because the summons itself is the indicator that the time is now. The alignment of your internal readiness and the external chaos is the perfect storm required for your transformation. If everything were easy, you would remain stagnant. The urgency you feel in your chest is the clock of destiny ticking, reminding you that your window of opportunity to pivot and ascend is open. You have been activated because the status quo is no longer an option for you or the world around you. Ultimately, being summoned now means you are part of a larger collective shift toward higher consciousness and rational purpose. You are being asked to step up not just for yourself, but for the legacy you are destined to leave behind. This moment requires you to stop looking at your life through a microscope of personal problems and start looking through a telescope of universal purpose. You are a crucial piece of a much larger puzzle, and the assembly of that picture depends on your willingness to answer the call today. The path of the lone wolf is often misunderstood as a life of sadness, but in reality it is a strategic separation required for greatness. When heaven or the higher intelligence calls your name, it explicitly asks you to come alone because the presence of others acts as a tether to your lower self. To reach the next level of your evolution, you must shed the collective consensus and the opinions of those who only know the version of you that no longer exists. This isolation is not a prison, it is a laboratory for your soul. Shedding old baggage in social circles is a surgical necessity on this journey. Most people are deeply invested in you staying exactly the same because your growth makes them feel insecure about their own stagnation. By pulling you away from the herd, the universe is protecting your fledgling vision from being crushed by the weight of common thinking. You are being stripped of your dependencies so that you can discover that your true power comes from within, not from the approval or support of a group. This phase of your life is about the purification of your intent. When you are alone, you cannot perform for an audience or hide behind the identity that others have projected onto you. You are forced to confront the raw, unedited version of yourself. This is the only way to build an authentic foundation for the work you are meant to do. The lone wolf path allows you to develop a self-reliance so profound that nothing in the external world can ever truly shake your confidence or your direction again. The necessity of this solitude becomes clear when you realize that the frequency of your calling is too high for the average person to perceive. If you try to bring everyone with you, you will inevitably slow down your ascent to accommodate their lack of vision. You are being asked to walk ahead as a scout, a pioneer who marks the trail for others to follow later. But for now, your focus must be entirely on the vertical climb, which requires you to travel light and without the distraction of looking back. Eventually, you will realize that being alone was the greatest gift you were ever given. It is in this solitary space that you forge a direct, unfiltered connection with the divine and your own higher intellect. The path of the lone wolf concludes with you becoming a self-contained powerhouse, someone who can enter any room and remain centered because they have already survived the wilderness. You are being prepared to lead, and a leader must first prove they can stand alone before they are ever trusted to stand for others. In a world that never stops screaming, the ability to decode the divine frequency is your greatest competitive advantage. Most people are drowned out by the constant static of social media, societal pressures, and the internal roar of their own anxieties, leaving them unable to hear the subtle guidance intended for their path. To tune into this higher signal, you must treat your mind like a radio receiver that needs precise calibration. This process begins with the radical realization that the most important information for your life will never come from an external source. It arrives through the quietest channel of your own consciousness. Developing the intuition required for the journey ahead is not a mystical luxury, but a practical necessity for the chosen one. Your logic is a powerful tool for navigating the material world, but it is limited by what it has already seen and experienced. Intuition, however, is your direct link to a higher intelligence that sees the entire map while you are still navigating the individual turns. By learning to trust that sudden surge of knowing or that persistent gut feeling, you begin to operate on a level of efficiency that others find supernatural, simply because you are moving in alignment with the flow of reality. To stay on this frequency, you must become a gatekeeper of your own attention. Every piece of useless information you consume and every trivial argument you engage in creates interference that blurs the signal. Tuning into the divine requires a commitment to mental hygiene, where you intentionally silence the noise to create a vacuum for inspiration. It is in these moments of deliberate stillness that the solutions to your biggest problems appear, often with a clarity that no amount of analytical thinking could ever produce. Recognizing the frequency is also about understanding the language of synchronicity. When you are properly tuned in, the world begins to speak back to you through meaningful coincidences and patterns that are too precise to be ignored. You start to notice that the right books, the right resources, and the right insights appear exactly when you need them. This is the universe confirming that you are on the right wavelength. Your task is to stay alert and observant, treating every interaction and every unexpected event as a potential coded message meant to guide your next move. Ultimately, mastering this frequency means becoming unshakable in your internal conviction. When you are receiving your directives from a source higher than the collective consensus, the opinions of the crowd lose their power over you. You no longer look for external validation because you have a direct line to the truth. This alignment transforms you into a beacon for others. By simply existing at this higher frequency, You naturally attract the opportunities and people that belong on your path while repelling everything that is designed to slow you down. The trial of isolation is the forge where your old, fragile self is broken down and your true essence is tempered into something unbreakable. There is a profound difference between loneliness and solitude, and the chosen one must learn to navigate the bridge between the two. Loneliness is a state of lack, a feeling of being disconnected and forgotten. But solitude is a state of abundance where you are so deeply connected to your purpose that you no longer need the constant presence of others to feel whole. This isolation is the first major test of your spiritual and mental stamina. Surviving the desert phase of your transformation requires an absolute surrender to the process of being alone. This is the period where your support systems are stripped away and you are left with nothing but your own thoughts and your own will. In the desert, there are no mirrors of social approval to tell you who you are, and there is no noise to distract you from your flaws. It is a brutal environment, but it is the only place where the ego can truly die. Only when you are stripped of everything that is not yours do you discover the core of your being that is indestructible. During this trial, you will face the temptation to run back to the familiar, even if the familiar was toxic or limiting. The silence can be terrifying because it forces you to face the parts of yourself you have spent a lifetime avoiding. However, if you resist the urge to escape and instead sit with the discomfort, you will find that the isolation begins to change its nature. What felt like a void begins to feel like a sanctuary. You realize that the absence of others is actually the presence of yourself, and in that presence you find a level of peace that no social gathering could ever provide. The strength you gain in isolation is what allows you to lead when you eventually return to the world. A person who has mastered themselves in the dark can never be manipulated by the light of fame or the shadows of criticism. You are being trained to be self-generating, to create your own motivation, your own joy, and your own sense of security. This independence is the hallmark of the chosen. By the time this trial is over, you will no longer fear being alone. You will cherish it as the space where your power is recharged and your vision is clarified. Finally, the trial of isolation proves to the universe and to yourself that you are worthy of the mission you have been given. It is a demonstration of loyalty to your higher calling over your lower desires for comfort and belonging. When you emerge from the forge of solitude, you do so with a gravity and a presence that others can sense immediately. You have faced the void and returned with a soul that is no longer dependent on the world for its worth. You are now ready to step into the role you were born for, carrying a light that was earned in the deepest darkness. To step into the magnitude of what you are becoming, you must first be willing to leave your name at the door. The ego is a collection of labels, past achievements, and social identities that keep you anchored to a version of yourself that is too small for the divine task at hand. Relinquishing the ego is not about losing your personality, but about stripping away the illusions of self-importance that prevent you from being a clear vessel for a higher purpose. Your old self cannot go where you are being called because that version of you is still seeking validation, and where you are going, only truth survives. The humility required for this great task is the ultimate form of strength. When you stop trying to protect your image or defend your reputation, you become untouchable. The ego thrives on conflict and the need to be right, but the chosen one thrives on the need to be effective. By dropping the me and the mine, you align yourself with the flow of a much larger intelligence. This transition feels like a death because it is a death. It is the expiration of the small, fearful identity that cared what the world thought, making room for a sovereign spirit that only cares what the mission requires. Many people fail at this stage because they are too attached to their own story. They want to be the hero of their narrative, rather than the servant of a higher vision. But the most powerful figures in history were those who realized they were merely conduits for something greater than themselves. When you relinquish your ego, you stop being a separate entity fighting against the world and start being a force of nature moving through it. You are no longer limited by your personal history or your perceived flaws because you are operating from a place of total detachment and divine service. This process of shedding is often accompanied by a profound sense of emptiness, but this is a sacred vacancy. It is the clearing of a workspace. If your mind is full of your own desires and your own pride, there is no room for the architectural blueprints of your destiny to be laid out. By humbling yourself, you are essentially telling the universe that you are ready to be used as a tool for change. This lack of ego makes you a dangerous opponent to the status quo, as you can no longer be bought with praise or broken by criticism. Ultimately, the surrender of the self leads to the discovery of the true power. When you no longer care who gets the credit, you can achieve the impossible. You move with a quiet confidence that doesn't need to shout to be heard. You understand that you are part of a celestial hierarchy, and your role is to execute your part with absolute precision and zero vanity. This is the mark of a true leader, one who has conquered themselves so thoroughly that they are finally capable of leading others toward the light, without getting lost in their own reflection. The signs you have been ignoring are not coincidences. They are the persistent knocks of destiny on the door of your consciousness. For years, you may have brushed off recurring patterns, strange synchronicities, and intense gut feelings as mere accidents of life. However, when you are chosen, the universe speaks to you in a specific, repetitive language designed to wake you up from your slumber. These signs are the breadcrumbs leading you back to your original purpose, and ignoring them is no longer an option if you wish to fulfill the role you were born for. Synchronicity is the universe's way of winking at you, confirming that you are exactly where you need to be. It might be a number that follows you, a specific phrase that appears in 3 different places in one day, or a person who enters your life with the exact piece of information you were missing. These are not random occurrences. They are moments where the veil between the physical and the spiritual world thins. When you begin to pay attention, you realize that you are being guided with surgical precision toward a specific outcome, and the more you acknowledge these signs, the more frequently they appear. Connecting the dots of your past is essential to seeing your future. When you look back at your most painful moments, your biggest failures, and your unexpected detours, you will start to see a hidden thread of logic connecting them all. Every hardship was a training session, and every closed door was a redirection toward a path that was meant only for you. The things that felt like tragedies at the time were actually the necessary friction required to shape your character. Once you see the pattern in your history, you can no longer believe that your life is a series of accidents. Your intuition, or that gut feeling, is your internal radar system that has been trying to protect and direct you since childhood. Often we are taught to ignore this feeling in favor of cold, hard logic. But for the chosen one, logic is often too slow. Your intuition is processing thousands of variables that your conscious mind cannot see, and it is giving you a summary in the form of a feeling. Ignoring this internal compass is what leads to the cycles of struggle you've been trapped in. It is time to stop doubting your own inner voice and start treating it as the highest authority in your life. Seeing these signs requires a level of awareness that most people never achieve, because they are too distracted by the noise of the world. By choosing to be observant, you are stepping into a partnership with the divine. You are no longer walking blindly. You are navigating a landscape that is actively responding to your presence. The transition from ignoring the signs to following them is the moment you stop being a victim of fate and start becoming a master of your destiny. The signs are there, screaming for your attention. All you have to do is finally decide to see them. Before we conclude this journey, remember that being chosen is not a destination you arrive at, but a state of being you must maintain every single day. You have spent this time learning that your isolation was preparation, your struggle was a stress test, and your silence was a summoning. You are now equipped with the understanding that the call you heard in the dark was the most honest conversation you will ever have. The question is no longer whether you are ready, but whether you are willing to walk this path until the very end. As the great philosopher Rumi once said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." Do not regret your scars or your time spent in the wilderness, for they are the very things that allow you to carry the brilliance of your purpose into a world that desperately needs it. You were never meant to fit in because you were designed to lead the way out. I want to hear from you now. Which part of this message resonated most with your current situation? What have you realized about your own journey while listening to this? If you've made it this far, it shows you are truly committed to answering your call. To show your support and help this message reach more people who are wandering in the dark, drop the word "mbaya." Chosen in the comments below. Let it be a signal to others that the elite are rising and that no one on this path is truly alone. Stay rational, stay focused, and keep answering the call. This is RationalDeen. We will see you in the next one.